this is the 30th anniversary for the studio, and I've gone through too many anniversaries where I didn't really do anything about it, so now I wanted to kind of dive a little bit into the history of the studio over the years, and also kind of like where I come from originally. Can skip the childhood bit, but I started playing in a band around, I think, 91 or so. I borrowed a drum kit in around 7th grade, I think. I started taking drum lessons, so that's how it started. And when I joined the band, I was in 9th grade. I had to dig a little bit actually because I couldn't really remember, but the first name we went under was Excess, which I thought was like a cool thrash name, which was kind of the genre I was aiming at as well. It eventually turned into a death metal band, since that was the big thing at the moment, or yeah, it was kind of almost inevitable. We changed the name to, or added psionic, so psionic excess, which was just a word I made up. I eventually changed it to psychonic excess, which was even more made up. And at that point I realized it was just silly, so I wanted to change it again to psychotic excess. But my guitar player, or our guitar player, thought it was enough with the name changes, so we were stuck with that name. So it's a little bit on the embarrassing side to have been in a band with a phony name, but that's what it was. We were rehearsing in the basement of my school. It was me and 2 other guys from school. That was the first lineup. It was death metal, kind of. I had the idea I wanted to do something not like the typical thing you would hear from Stockholm, and I'm from Stockholm. So it was more like I was a bit inspired by like My Dying Bride, Paradise Lost, Pungent Stench. It's a little bit on the slower side. I wanted to add all kinds of elements, so I brought in a guy to play cello. I had brought in a couple of girls to do female vocals and keyboards and whatnot, but luckily I abandoned that pretty quickly. We rehearsed a lot back then, I think probably a couple of days a week at least. We did some local shows, but very few, and we were always kind of like chasing gigs, but we never got on the bill with any like interesting things. I always had some sort of interest in at least like making recordings. I was doing that a lot with like just playing, but then when I kind of learned how studios worked, I wanted to do this like layering sounds and stuff, and yeah, it was something almost magical, and I wanted to get into that. And back in those days it was something very expensive, like not everybody could do it, so it took a while. I think it was in summer holiday between 9th grade and high school. I got a summer job and managed to earn a bit of money, so I bought my first Porta Studio, which is a 4-track cassette recorder. So I had 4 channels to work with, which was was just amazing at the time. nowadays is almost comically limited. I had that. I had one microphone, and I just started like experimenting with it and making demos and little odd recordings, all kinds of things. I didn't have much clue about anything. I read the manual for the Porta Studio, kind of like I can't remember like how else would I have gotten any experience. I was just listening. I think that was it. I started acquiring some gear, some of which I brought up here because I still have most of it. Unfortunately, I don't have the Porta Studio. That was borrowed by a pretty legendary person in the black metal scene, which is something that is very annoying because I have all those old recordings that I can't listen to at the moment.
Did you ask it back or?
No, I never saw him again. And that might actually give a clue to who it is. I started building up a little arsenal kind of around the Porta Studio. I have this photo of a very early setup, and there you can also see this one, which was my first mixing desk. And I can't remember exactly how I used it, but I think I brought most of the drum channels in and just to mix them down to one channel for the recording. Some of this, I think most of this I bought second hand. Some of I think this one some effect unit. I probably bought this new, but this was dirt cheap as well. It's like it's really I had this graphic EQ, super basic stuff, but I believe I probably put like for sure like kick and snare through this just to kind of get a little bit more EQ capability. Boss BX80, super basic mixer, but it does have bass and treble on each channel, so like a little bit more control. I had one SM57 that I bought together with the Porta. Even came with a very home-built mic stand, so I didn't even own a proper mic stand until much later. I eventually got like this cheapest mic you can find kind of thing. It's a very plasticky thing that you get in like this mail order catalog things. So I had that, and then I was hanging the 57 from a hook in the ceiling. So that was my drum recording setup. Around that time, like 93, 94-ish, I was also studying music in high school. And one of the things they had there was an Atari computer with a sound module. And so I started like playing around with that, and I got very much into that. And anyone working with MIDI, like in its early days, like you had 16 channels, which was pretty cool. Of course, you couldn't record any audio, but you could layer stuff, and it was open up a whole new world. Shortly after playing around with that, I really felt I need to get this for myself. So I bought an Atari running Cubase 3.01, very first version that I had, and the synth module was Roland SC33. I bought the sound module and I was just playing around with that. Of course, then you could take whatever you recorded on the Atari, just moved it over to the Porta Studio, and then you could layer like audio stuff on top of it. So that was basically that. I did get some more stuff eventually. I got some very cheap mics. Can't remember the brand. I might actually still have them. But I had 3 of those. I had also 3 mic stands then, so I could use those for toms, and probably move the 57 to snare, whatever I used for overheads at that point, I can't remember. But that was kind of the beginning. I was also mixing down to, a little bit funny thing, I was mixing down to this NAD tape deck that I had acquired, which unfortunately ran at the wrong speed. So every time I had to mix things down, I had to pitch it up on the Porta Studio. And of course, like mixing down to cassette, not to that or anything fancy like that. That also came much later. And yeah, I had my nice drum kit that I had gotten around 91 or so. It was a Tama Swingstar, white one. Still have it, never use it. No amplifiers. I had my drum kit. I had first guitar. I've never been much into like collecting guitars or anything, but I got this one. Bought it from a guy for like around 100 euros or something. It's a Yamaha RGX 110. Has basically nothing on it, just the volume. And at some point I swapped the pickup for a Bartolini pickup, which is an active one, but it's not run as active. It actually runs as passive. So yeah, it's pretty much that. Tuned always to D standard. This guitar was used for most of the old stuff, because for whatever reason people didn't bring their own instruments. So when you have like, yeah, all the early stuff up to I don't know what point, they would just show up with basically nothing, maybe a pair of drumsticks if you were lucky. So they would use my instrument. So this one has been on a lot of interesting releases over the years. Same with the drum kit. Same with cymbals and everything. As I said, people just showed up with nothing. This was at my parents' place, and at first, so I had my drum kit, and then I just set up the equipment kind of in front of it. Eventually, I wanted to separate this into 2 rooms, so my dad helped me out with like just building a separation wall. So then I had an ISO booth for the drum kit, and yeah, some sort of makeshift control room. And I had this bench built to put up the equipment and stuff. It's in this nice photo right here. And that's actually basically where everything really started.
What do you think was the role of your parents in this process?
I think that any parent who lets their kid play drums in their house must be very supportive, because it must be the most annoying thing you can listen to. And then, I mean, eventually, like actually bringing bands there, it's kind of insane. Just having people coming from the outside making even more noise, which wasn't something like it didn't go on for very long, but it happened. So very supportive. I mean, repurposing part of their house for me to have the studio there, that's a pretty big thing, I'd say. My mom has a very big heart, so she kept kind of really supporting me with money and so on, so I could survive. But my dad was pushing a bit more for that I should kind of get a real job, so to speak. And I mean, at the time I wasn't earning any money from this either, so it didn't really feel like, I don't even know if I was thinking about it as a career. I kind of wanted to get a normal job and just have like a steady income, and then use that to kind of buy more equipment for my kind of hobby. But it just never happened. So I got stuck with but yeah, I kept doing what I was doing, and trying to make something out of it. At first I was doing a lot of recordings with my own band. I had done at least one recording with another band that came in from the outside, but otherwise it was just my own stuff. I can't really remember, but a lot of it would be probably just going into the mixer, and as I said, just coming out to one channel on the Porta Studio. And anyone who has worked with these very primitive things will know about bouncing, which is what I had to do. So if we picture a scenario where we want drums, couple of guitars, bass and vocals, what I would do would be drums on channel 1, everything mixed down to 1. I think maybe eventually I would do kick, snare and the rest on channel 2, 3, 4, bounce that to channel 1, but that was a bit later. Guitar on channel 2 and 3, bounce it over to channel 4, put the bass on channel 3, so then we have bass on 3, both guitars on 4, bounce 3 and 4 down to channel 2, and then we have 2 open tracks for vocals, keyboards, whatever else goes on there, solos, yeah, overdubs basically. So that was the thing. We would have drums on one channel, we would have the rest of the stuff on one channel, and 2 channels for vocals. The first rehearsal place that we had with the band, there was a studio there, very modest one, but still, and it was a little bit funny because the studio room was locked, but we could see through the windows. I could see like the equipment in there, which wasn't much. It was a mixing desk, it was like 8-track tape recorder, maybe some couple of effect units, and eventually we recorded there. Recorded the demo tape. It was never released, but that was my first experience with it, and yeah, I thought the whole process felt really cool, just the layering. Well, people in the music industry or the technical side of it will know about the gear acquisition syndrome, or GAS as we call it, and that started very early. I just wanted to have more. I had my 4 channels, I wanted to have 8 channels. Like, I wasn't aiming very high, but like 8 channels, it felt like it was such a higher level than the 4 that I have to deal with. So I was kind of like begging my parents to help me out, like getting this equipment. They said no, so that really didn't really work out, unfortunately. Or I don't know. So I was stuck with my 4 channels, but that's really like how the studio eventually started, or what I call the start of the studio. The first demo that was released with my first band, that was also like, yeah, that was a let's call it proper studio. Really nice space, nice mixing desk, like I think it was 16 or 24 track tape recorder. Like, they had all this stuff that you had seen, like that I had seen in magazines up to that point. So it was like this really cool thing to walk into a studio like that. So I had been around some stuff. I had never had a chance to really try things out myself in that studio or in that kind of environment, but I had dipped my feet in it at least. The Stockholm death metal scene had just exploded around those years, and but at that time I didn't really get that the Sunlight sound. I thought it was too like too rough or something. I'm not sure. But I really liked the Morris sound stuff back then. That was kind of like the sound I wanted to achieve somehow, but of course that was very different level. But that was my inspiration. It's also like the kind of what the band turned into eventually also, because we didn't stick to that kind of like Paradise Lost sort of path. Started aiming a bit more towards maybe like D-side and bands like that, which also had to do with the development of me and the other guys in the band as musicians. It's just like taking that to the next level.